first episode of The Doctor is In for the second semester this school year. I want to talk about two things. First, make sure to get off to a good start this semester. Come to school as much as possible and be on time as much as possible. Don't just show up on time. That way you can get to school, class, and get all your things and keep them from piling up. Second, stay on top of assignments and due dates. You don't want to get backed up and owe assignments while new ones are continuing to pile on you. Also, study the whole time throughout the semester, not just the last minute. That way you don't have to worry about cramming and you can perform better on your finals as they come up at the end of the year. The second thing I want to talk about was a documentary I found that was done by Plymouth North News. That's the news agency for Plymouth High School. And they speak to a growing problem in southeastern Massachusetts. I don't want to spoil it too much, but it's really well done. It highlights an issue with drugs we all, students, teachers, parents, need to be aware of, so please pay attention to this important topic. It's a very serious one, and they included opinions of judges, police, guidance counselors, students, drug dealers, and a doctor. It's easy to say that the clip deals with just the South Shore or Plymouth because that's what they talk about as it's relevant to their school. But this issue can't be ignored here locally. With the advent of 3 local recent overdoses, 1 in Attleboro and 2 in Taunton, a Boston Globe article that talks about southeastern Massachusetts and not just South Shore, and a Standard Times article this past weekend. That's why I have a member from our local chapter of SAD here to explain a little bit more about that group and what they do here.
Thank you, Dr. Jones. So, as Dr. Jones just told you guys, we'll be watching a great documentary that really explains the dangers of different drugs that are entering this region of the United States. But more importantly, I want to tell you guys a little bit about SAD that most of the students don't actually know about. So SAD is a club that stands for Students Against Destructive Decisions. We really try to help all the students here at SHS make great decisions every day. These decisions include stuff such as not drinking, not doing drugs, and like my brothers and I have our campaign against texting and driving. We really hope that every student here today gets the opportunity to see how dangerous all these drugs are and really to make the decision to not get involved in these drugs. I hope that you enjoy the documentary, and if you have any interest in joining SAD, please talk to Mrs. Angelini.
Earlier in the show, we provided you with a brief introduction to today's episode of PNN, what we like to call the teasers.
And in these teasers, we mentioned showing you our first in-depth documentary. The news team here at PNN felt as though this is an issue that everyone should know more about.
Drug usage is becoming a serious problem in our school as well as in our community. Here's Pat Fay with more on this growing epidemic.
Plymouth, Massachusetts has been America's hometown for close to 400 years. This community that has passed the test of time is now being threatened by an encroaching enemy: illegal substances. Marijuana, hallucinogens, methamphetamines, and opiates are all creating an epidemic of addiction in our hometown's neighborhoods. Plymouth Public Schools and Plymouth Police are struggling to combat the viciousness and ruthlessness of drug abuse within its schools, students, friends, and families. But is it enough? Has the problem escalated beyond a simple cure?
I think it's a desire to fit in. I think that's that's where it starts. It certainly doesn't end there.
I think that peer pressure is huge. It's a huge problem among kids. Kids go to a party and they feel like they have to participate in what's going on, and they don't know how to be social and not partake in the drinking or the drugs. It's kind of walking a fine line because they want to hang out with their friends, they want to go to a party, they want to be social, but when they're offered with something, they don't know how to deal with it and they don't know how to say no.
What I've actually realized is people just smoke marijuana just so they can hang out with some people. Because I realized after not smoking, you won't hang out with some of the same people because all they want to do is just go smoke. But that's not all there is to do, so.
Teenagers are naturally susceptible to curiosity. Students experiment throughout high school with different hobbies, friends, classes, and oftentimes controlled substances, popularly being marijuana. World-renowned as the gateway drug, marijuana is often an initiating substance for drug users. Many students are now going past experimentation and continuing on to try harder drugs, as well as become distributors.
If you're smoking every day, it's generally kids use it as a coping skill. Like they're stressed out with school, they're stressed out with home life, they have an issue somewhere in their life if you're smoking every day. So if you're using it as a coping skill, if I came up to you and said, this coping skill is good, but I have something better that'll even last longer and it's more powerful, and all you have to do is drop a pill, you don't even need to do anything. So you drop the pill and that escalates. So now it's no longer just something that you want to do, it's something that you have to do.
Just kind of saw some weed one day, heard a bunch of people talking about it, started smoking it, then the other drugs just started coming around.
I was growing up in a small town, just around here. When I was growing up, it was, freshman, 8th grade, 9th grade, freshman year, kids were smoking weed a lot and stuff. But as I started getting older into the junior, senior year, kids started getting more introduced to Percocets, OCs, getting involved with that. So I lost a lot of close friends of mine to addiction and overdose. My younger brother actually became addicted, and he actually lost his battle about like 6 months ago to overdose, and that's something that he was struggling with for a long time.
We also have had significant deaths in the Plymouth County area, and frequently we dismiss cases where folks have not made it. We had one of our individuals become comatose on the steps of the courthouse waiting for his urine screen to come back, and he passed out and ended up being brought to the hospital.
To most people, it would be shocking to discover the wide variety of drugs that teenagers are getting their hands on.
I mean, kids have come into my office and told me that they've done everything from, smoking weed or spice to doing heroin. Nothing that a kid could tell me at this point would surprise me.
While the abundant appearance of drugs is disturbing, it is equally as shocking to identify the popularity among students.
I think I have seen an increase. I would say probably the adjustment counselor and the school psychologist and the other guidance counselors would agree that a lot of drugs are being used more recreationally, and we do see sometimes kids using drugs recreationally and then it turning into a problem more and more often.
Local community distributor, who goes by the name of Knockout, explains the reasoning behind selling controlled substances, specifically in the South Shore.
Like, we're struggling with money, and it's just sort of like something you can get in and out of easily around here.
Knockout has not only been involved in the distribution of substances, but has also partaken in abusing them himself.
What were some of the negative side effects of using pills?
You will feel like the next day, depending on how much you do.
How much would you do?
I remember one night popping 2 oxys of Percocet and a Vicodin and the next morning feeling like I needed more.
Are the pills you get in from your friends, are they pharmaceutical grade, or do you just have no idea where they're getting them from?
They're getting them from hospitals.
How do they get them from hospitals?
I knew a person working at a hospital, and they would steal doctors' notes and forge them.
So the employee at the hospital would steal doctor's notes? How do they get?
They just fill out the doctor's note, go to a pharmacist, and get the drugs.
Were they like a nurse or just, somebody cleaning the office?
Yeah, just a volunteer.
Oh, just a volunteer, wow. Not down in Plymouth, is it?
Jordan's Hospital.
Plymouth North High School, a place where over 1,000 students enter every day, is directly across the street from what has just been identified to be one of the many possible medical buildings in the area where people could be taking advantage of non-prescribed narcotics. Dr. James Finale of Jordan Hospital, now Beth Israel Deaconess Hospital of Plymouth, discussed these allegations.
Certainly it's possible the prescription pads get stolen, although now I will tell you prescription pads in hospitals are under lock and key for almost anything. You don't see them laying around on the desks anymore because of this kind of issue. We do pay a lot of attention to make sure they're locked up, and I will tell you 5, 6, 7 years ago everybody had them in their drawers, but now we lock them up. And in the emergency room it's really important, and in the hospital with our physicians who are called hospitalists that do all the inpatient stuff, we have them under much tighter control. Can't say it's perfect, but it's much more vigilant now than it's ever been.
I would be remiss if I didn't mention that there's an explosion of synthetic opiate use in Plymouth County. I'm sure you all know about that, and it's all over the newspapers. We are one of the highest usage areas in the country.
Though Massachusetts ranks first in the country in amount of heroin overdoses and fifth in the country in marijuana use, with almost 15% of residents admitting to smoking pot, it ranks last in the country in amount of drug-related arrests, including Colorado and Washington, where marijuana is legal for recreational use. There is also a vast difference in amount of drug-related arrests from Massachusetts to the second lowest state on the poll, Hawaii, which is 6 times higher than our state and only 1/3 the population. Equally disturbing is how drug users and dealers perceive Massachusetts law enforcement's response to this situation.
Have you ever been pulled over by the police and been either high driving or with a high driver?
Yeah.
How is that situation? Do the cops notice that when people are under the influence of marijuana driving?
Some of them do. They can pick up on it. A lot of them don't care though, like as much as if it was a drunk driver. Like every person I've driven with high has been caught, has been let off the hook.
I think there are several reasons for that. Number one is the people that we elect into office. They're the ones that make the laws. They consistently make these laws to give people a greater expectation of privacy than in other states. At the district court, superior court, and Mass judicial Supreme Court level, those courts have also consistently ruled that the people have a greater expectation of privacy, once again, than that of the other 49 states. Massachusetts is recognized as the state that the police probably have the least amount of power out of every other police department in the country. Just one example. When you pull over a car in Massachusetts, as compared to other parts in the country, at the federal level, a Texas cop could pull you over and immediately tell you to get out of the car. When that happens, when that person is at a disadvantage, drugs can fall out, they don't have time to move around in the vehicle. In Massachusetts, I cannot order somebody out of a car unless I feel that my life is in danger. That's just one example.
I asked some of the participants to talk about how they became involved with heroin. And what was surprising even to me was that many of them said, I started on pills and I thought I could take a pill at a party and that I wouldn't make a lot of difference. What I think folks don't realize is the level of potential addiction for one use is significant. That stays in your system for about 10 weeks, the low dose of opiate release. So most of the folks upstairs said, I started on pills, and within about 18 months to 2 years, virtually every one of them was using intravenous heroin.
Most popular in Plymouth and the South Shore is the use of prescription pills and heroin, both of which are being procured in the Plymouth community. Because prescription pills are so expensive, many addicts turn to a cheaper high, heroin. The South Shore is home to some of the purest heroin in the country. Heroin so pure that it accounts for 1 death every 8 days on the South Shore alone. An individual who lives on the South Shore is 10 times more likely to die of an overdose than anywhere else in the country.
Well, I mean, it's concerning that they're doing heroin, and they know it's wrong. It's not like they're like pro heroin. It's just like, I don't know, it's sad to see them like that. Like they always tell you, like, don't turn out like me. But what it is it usually starts with pills, and then heroin's more affordable, and they can get their fix for cheaper, so they go to that.
The synthetic opiates, people can take a pill at a party and they're using heroin sometimes a month and a half later.
In 2012, in Plymouth District Court, there are 138 arraignments for possession of Class B, which is 22% of drug-related offenses. So possession of Class B would be cocaine, LSD, ecstasy, OxyContin, oxycodone, and amphetamines. So in Plymouth, there is a complete epidemic of opiate use, heroin abuse.
The 3 busiest courts in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, this includes all of the Boston courts, Worcester, Springfield, Lowell, Lawrence, New Bedford, Fall River, all those courts. The 3 busiest courts are number 1, Quincy, number 2, Brockton, and number 3, Plymouth. So we're outdistancing courts like the Boston Municipal Court, we're outdistancing Springfield and Worcester and Lowell and Lawrence, those big cities.
As far as this drug problem in Plymouth that you talk about, as well as even in this high school where I work, there is definitely a problem. And I can guarantee you, the Plymouth Police Department and all police departments in Massachusetts are doing everything that we can under the law to try to keep it under control.
Many students have fallen victim to the endless cycle of controlled substances. What initiates as a seemingly harmless activity can quickly spiral out of control.
Addiction's a disease that isn't really classified as a disease. Like, people don't understand exactly what that means when you say addiction's a disease. And, nobody wakes up, tomorrow saying that I want to be an addict.
It's a battle, and I think most of the folks upstairs that we see in drug court very much want to stop, and their families want them to stop, and they come in the building here, a lot of them kids that are in their teens, and some of their friends bring them in and say, they say, I'm sick and I need help.
Unfortunately, many people know an addict or suffer themselves from substance abuse. While it may appear as the social norm to experiment with drugs, too often it becomes a destructive regularity which leads to the abuse of illegal substances. We as a community need to make the right decision and help one another. Reporting for PNN, I'm Pat Fay.
Please give your feedback. Please drop it in my mailbox. We want to make this work, and that only happens with your help. Thanks for listening. You can find the latest character post on my blog. Have a great vacation.